This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 442 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund extending their winning streak to 8 out of 8 in 2023 by beating, as last Proman correctly predicted, Hertha Berlin 4-1, and we will preview Saturday's match away to 15th place TSG Hoffenheim. For all that and more, joins me, yes, you guessed it, Lars Proman. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, thank you very much for reminding people of my excellent prediction skills, which I completely forgot about until after the game, so it's not necessarily like I can toot my own horn too much. How are you, Stefan?
I'm doing well, thank you. And we also have a sponsor for this episode, as you may have guessed.
Wir sind komplett schuldenfrei, wir zahlen keinen einzigen Euro an Zinsen.
Because we need, of course, to reveal the winner of the Official League giveaway. Official League is the sponsor of this episode, again, who make hats or caps or lids. I don't know what exactly they call it, so I guess caps is the right word, but anyway, they have a really cool collection partnered up with Borussia Dortmund, and so if you're still waiting in line for your special edition Dortmund shirt, maybe you can go over to officialleague.co and purchase your hat there. But one who does not have to purchase a hat is John Lambert, because he has made all the correct things. He has tweeted at Schmelzer under the giveaway tweet, and he has followed Official League on Twitter. And of course, that makes him eligible. And with that, congrats to a new hat. Watch out for your DMs on Twitter, John. And yeah, with that, we can move on to what was, in the end, a very nice Sunday afternoon, especially knowing that Bayern Munich had already lost and Schalke had drawn scoreless to Union Berlin. So it was clear that Dortmund, with another win, could move toward the top of the table, because they're still tied first or second, now separated by goal difference. Unfortunately, not by wins, because I think Dortmund have more wins in the table than Bayern Munich currently. But Lars, let's start with the starting lineup, because I think I heard you make a few predictions for that starting lineup, but in the end there were more changes than maybe anticipated. So what were your thoughts on the 11 that Terzic brought out?
I don't necessarily remember what I predicted. I only remember correct predictions, Stefan, as one does.
So not that many.
In your case, anyway. I think I was a bit surprised at just the amount of changes, just because they are well attuned to playing midweek fixtures at this point of the season, and they had the current week, I guess, off. So didn't necessarily expect Bellingham's first Bundesliga rest by coach's decision of the season, for example. A few other things, but I mean, ultimately, I guess it's a sign of the strength of this squad at the moment, that you can make these changes and things don't look too dissimilar from, the first 7 games of the year. Obviously, not having Bellingham in the center of the park is quite a big change, but I think other than that, I couldn't necessarily say that I missed Niklas Süle playing ahead of Mats Hummels, for example, even though I think right now in the more important fixtures it would be Süle over Hummels.
Yeah, I think we can definitely agree on that. Yeah, after I think predicting it, was also pretty pleased that Daniel Malen started up front, because I always wanted to see him in the striker position again, with a more informed team around him, and see what that would do. And obviously he did score the 2-0, but before that we should maybe talk about the first half hour, because I thought that Dortmund did not have a very good ball circulation, and Hertha were doing pretty well, pressing Dortmund and creating shots themselves. I mean, overall, Hertha created 16 shots compared to Dortmund's 12. And they looked to be quite dangerous. And obviously, I was not surprised by that, if I'm honest, because it is a classic trap game, especially at the back of a Champions League game, which, shines a little bit more prominently than a match against Hertha Berlin, who are, I don't know, pretty far down the table. So, but, they still have decent players and decent organization, I would say. So, overall, I think it's fair to say that Dortmund did miss another playmaker in deep lying midfield. I thought that Charlie Özcan did struggle a little bit with keeping the ball to himself or among his lines. And I don't know. I personally probably would have started Mo Dahoud, but obviously, he is a topic for further down the line because of the news coming from Sebastian Kehl. But what I did like is that we had obviously the very nice chemistry again between Marco Reus and Julian Brandt. That was nice to see. And of course, Karim Adeyemi continuing where he left off in previous games. Now, obviously, the annoying part is that he picked up an injury and will now be out for 3 weeks. But Lars, again, do you think that Karim Adeyemi has settled into a degree where he really knows now how to utilize his strengths?
I'm not necessarily sure that he needed to know that. I think it's more a case of Terzic and the coaching staff not really figuring out how to use his qualities in the first half of the season. If you remember how many times Adeyemi as a predominantly left-footed player was put on the right wing across from Daniel Mahlen most of the time, and then supposed to provide width despite his dominant foot being the left one. So whenever Adeyemi tried to do what he was supposed to do, he basically had to turn around and face his own goal to have the ball at his preferred foot, and that just does not make sense. Obviously, it's also down to confidence and I suppose getting that first Bundesliga goal out of the way. Maybe a stern talking to or two during the winter break, which there's been enough reporting now that they spoke to Adeyemi and Can in particular, but I suppose pretty much every player after a pretty disappointing first part of the season. So now he's injured for 3 weeks. I think that's almost a sort of best case scenario after what looked like a pretty severe muscle injury. If that had been a torn muscle strand, that might have been 3 months, which basically would have meant season over almost. Might have also been obviously just a strain or whatever, but I think we all kind of knew when he went down that quickly. Didn't even look at Daniel Mahlen finishing off his assist. I think that looked pretty painful and was quite obvious that something was torn rather than strained. So I think 3 weeks, obviously not ideal because Adeyemi was probably the most informed out-and-out attacker because I think Brandt is obviously more of a midfielder. But then again, I think they have the recent experience of Adeyemi being suspended both in the league and the cup, and they still won 2 games without him. So it's not like this is absolute devastation. Assuming obviously that he's going to come back within the time frame that's given to us and picking up where he left off, because it would be a shame for him to lose all the momentum and all the confidence that he only just regained through injury. But that's also part of the game, and I think in terms of Dortmund's usual bad luck with injuries, I think him and Moukoko being out at the same time is still pretty low on the spectrum.
Yeah, that is correct. But nevertheless, another goal, another assist, and I mean, the goal came about a little bit coincidentally, if you will. But if you're in that flow, I mean, first of all, Marco Reus winning the ball in midfield and then, having quick passes between Brandt and Reus and then obviously Adeyemi. But Marco Reus did admit that it wasn't a pass, it was an attempted shot that he just mishit. But still, to have this kind of flow to score with your back heel on the turn is just oozing confidence, because you're not thinking at this moment. And it was a hell of a sexy goal. And considering how the game was going, I didn't quite see it coming, to be honest. And it is just speaking for the wave that Dortmund are riding currently. And then to score 3 minutes later, where Adeyemi, I forgot who it was in the back line from Hertha, might have been Oremovic, who Adeyemi, even though his muscle fibers were already tearing, absolutely torched. And the assist for Daniel Malen, also really a nice cross into the box, and considering that he did it while also grabbing his thigh, I'm just more than impressed with that. And Daniel Malen, right place, right time, nice finish, and does him also a lot of confidence. I think the stats were out there that it took Malen 26 shots to score a goal, which is the most amount of attempts needed for any striker in the Bundesliga this season. So, hope he can build on that, because if I believe Terzic and his comments at the pre-game conference, this is probably something that we will see more often now that Moukoko is still out, and that Aller needs his breaks here and there. So hopefully Malen will do better, because I thought he had very good moments, but also some moments where his decision making was just not quick enough, and he was dribbling too much when he probably should have picked out the pass. And slow things down. And obviously his defensive work rate is nowhere near where it needs to be, but at least he can hide it a little bit better when he's playing striker. But apart from that, maybe a quick switch of play. But Lars, how do you like the special edition jersey? And I don't know if you want to also talk about the smoke grenade that Hertha fans launched at the beginning of the game, but Dortmund definitely did have a whole theme there. I don't know if you got your hands on one or not, but the demand was certainly high.
Yeah, I think on Saturday I entered the fan shop basically just to see the queue, because it was quite obvious that not everyone would be able to get one right away. And over the course of the day, I let the idea marinate inside me, as it were, and ultimately I complete the set, if you will, because I obviously have the first blackout kit and the neon kit. So I just said, what the hell, it's coming, I think, half a year from now, basically, but I do have a blackout edition number 9 Sebastian Aller kit coming to my house eventually. Despite my not liking it as much as the first blackout edition, but that's mostly down to the sponsorship of Evonik looking better than 1-in-1. It is what it is. The Hertha stuff with the smoke grenade or whatever, I'm probably not in the stadium often enough to appreciate that aspect of support in German football. I think having been at the Revier Derby in September, that was quite a bit of pyrotechnics going off in front of me on the yellow wall. That was just about fine, but when you see players holding their noses because the smell is unbearable and game has to be halted for 4 or 5 minutes, I think that's not necessarily my cup of tea. I don't know all the details of what Hertha fans were protesting. I think it was a concerted action with fans from like Frankfurt and Hamburg or whatever. So it's not my cup of tea. I appreciate that it's not necessarily their legal right, but their philosophical right, as it were, to protest things. I don't really know. If it were up to me, I think protesting is fine, but maybe not influencing the game like that.
Yeah, maybe a little less smoke. But I mean, in the end, it was Dortmund who brought all the smoke anyway, and smoked Hertha, as it were, for the one. If we talk about fan things, or if you want to hear more about it, I think there are better podcasts to do it. Especially this week, I think what happened to Cologne fans as they traveled to Stuttgart and then not being able to attend the game is probably a much more important subject than whatever Hertha fans were protesting. But back to the game, and maybe we can switch over to the second half, because it's not that that more things happened in the first half, to be honest. And right out of the gate, after the break, Dortmund did concede. And first of all, it was really lax defending, but at the same time, I thought that Hertha, for the only time this game pretty much, were a bit more clever in their, counterattacks, breaks, whatever you want to call it. Because the layoff from Sudat Serdar to Luka Tuzar, who then really smashed it under the crossbar, was rather smart, because otherwise I thought that Hertha, when they were afforded the ball, like Marcus Wolf gave it away in the first half, or in other instances, they took a lot of snapshots, so to speak, where Gregor Kobel wasn't really that much threatened by them, and obviously they could have been a little bit smarter about it. But in that instance, I don't know how you want to describe this defensive sequence that was rather non-existing last, but I thought Dortmund were not quite switched on.
I mean, a goal against in the 46th minute, I've never seen that from Dortmund over the years. I mean, you can't defend everything in the Bundesliga, even against somewhat pedestrian attacking sides, such as Hertha. But I think the least you can expect is full commitment from players who are supposed to be defensive-minded. And I'm looking at particularly Salih Özcan in that instance. And just generally, I'm not necessarily impressed with him over the last few games, because the goal, Tuzar, who's a fine player, whom I wouldn't mind Dortmund signing as a side note, the goal doesn't happen or very unlikely to happen in my opinion, if Özcan is just tracking back in a way that you can expect a defensive midfielder by trade to do. I mean, it's the umpteenth goal this season that they've conceded after a hole is developing in front of their backline, where a player such as Özcan, or maybe Can, or Dahoud if he was playing, or sometimes Bellingham, regardless of personnel, they've had this issue of leaving too many gaps, or too big gaps ahead of their defensive line, and that's where Tuzar made the darting run into the box. And I think there's the behind the goal angle on the TV signal, at least in Germany, but it basically shows you that if Özcan had made the run that he's supposed to do, he's basically there where Tuzar is taking the shot. So either Tuzar has to move into a less advantageous shooting position, or the pullback pass isn't even attempted. So I mean, it's obviously a bit hindsight 2020 and whatever, or too easy to make that kind of assumption. But if Özcan makes that run, chances are the goal doesn't happen. And it's not the first time this season that such a simple, not tactically difficult, not particularly straining or whatever, just mental switched onness, if that's a word.
Yes, it is now.
Yeah, and that's just lacking a bit. And as I said, I think I was one of the big supporters of the signing of Salih Özcan in the summer. I still think he's a good player who will develop into the kind of player that is good enough for the level Dortmund want to be at. But right now it's just not enough from him, both on the ball and especially given what he's supposed to be doing off the ball.
Yeah, maybe this is a good segue then to the Dahoud subject, because Sebastian Kiel did come out, I don't know what day, but it was certainly
Monday.
This week. Yeah, Monday, saying that Dortmund will not extend the contract with Mahmoud Dahoud. Your reaction, Lars?
I'm sad. One of my favorite players, as long-time listeners will know. I think there's also a bit of a misconception, because a lot of people have taken the opportunity to praise Kiel especially, but Dortmund in general, for being tougher on the team and, making the difficult decisions to move forward and getting a bit more success driven and less sentimental or whatever. But yesterday, late in the evening, there was a report from Watz, a local paper close to Dortmund, who basically wrote that Dortmund would have extended Dahoud's contract just for 1 year, and Dahoud and his agent wanted a more long-term solution. So it's not like Dortmund categorically said, you know what, you're a fine guy and a good player, but we don't want you anymore. So but rather, we are not sure how much we want you, but stick around for one more season, would you? And I think I can understand Dahoud's perspective. He's now 27 years old. He's a 2-time Germany international, and he's not getting much playing time at Dortmund. So getting the opportunity to sign for another reasonably big club, and there's reports out there that Milan, Sevilla, Leicester City, so decent clubs from good European leagues are interested in him. That's something that he should pursue, obviously, but perhaps a bit selfishly, I don't like losing the players I grow attached to over the years, and someone like Lockdown Iniesta for me will always have a special place in my heart.
Well, here's the thing. I think it was a mistake to not bring on Dahoud after seeing what Özcan produced, especially also going into the second half. And to me, a player like Dahoud was much, much needed. And if we all remember, when he went down with a shoulder injury against Werder Bremen, it sort of, flipped the whole game on its head, because I don't know how many minutes it was in, maybe 8 or so, not that many, but Dortmund were playing pretty well. And to that point, Dahoud, I thought, was also a part of Dortmund doing well. And then when he came off, the regression of ball possession and circulation and overall dominance was easily seen. And I think in the game, especially against an opponent like Hertha Berlin, Dahoud would be a perfect player to have, even as a holding midfielder, because to me, ball retention is more important than ball winning, especially if, like Özcan, you're not even making the runs anyway. That being said, Özcan obviously did have a few very good ball winning moments, but it's not like Dahoud never has them. He also is a fairly decent ball winner, I would say, and would have been, to me, in my book, a very good opportunity to reintroduce him after his shoulder injury. And the fact that he's currently not getting playing time is something beyond my assessment, because I do not know why the reason for that is, but at least on paper, to me, he should be in there, and he should get way more playing time than he has currently so far this season. So I don't know what his fitness level is. I don't know how he's doing in training, obviously, but other than that, I'm a bit disappointed to not see some more Dahoud magic, because I think he's a very good player that Dortmund can very much need right now, because even Jude Bellingham sometimes does not have this magic Hollywood pass that Dahoud has in his foot. And when you have players like Brandt and Royce in front of you, and also Adeyemi, of course, or even Malen, I would say, maybe not, but they're all players that make a lot of deep runs that Dahoud can play into, but also just, having quicker ball circulation, stuff like that, on a good Dahoud day, you will definitely get. But I'm struggling with the decision to let him go on a free transfer also, if I'm honest, because I do think he's a player that Dortmund do need, and maybe we'll see who the replacement is, and maybe it's a better version of Dahoud, but certainly from the player type, we don't have that many midfielders that have this sort of skill set, and it's very much needed, as this game very much proves. But Lars, if we shall move on, what I did appreciate about this game was that we finally saw a free kick goal again.
Yeah, I don't necessarily recall the last direct free kick. Must have been Guerrero, presumably. The last of Royce I did look up today was the final match day of the 2021 season, the 3-1 win against Leverkusen, where the Bender twins and referee Manuel Gräfe had their final Bundesliga games, and Reus scored there. A nice free kick. Only the 14th Bundesliga free kick goal the entire season after 21 match days, which kind of took me by surprise a little bit. But then if you look at the games from Dortmund this season, I don't remember anyone scoring a free kick on Dortmund. Might be incorrect there, but I think it's kind of a dying art, and I still think there's very few more satisfying things in football than just the perfect dinking free kick close to the penalty box, so difficult to get it up and down, but just the right amount of touch and pace. And possibly if the Hertha goalkeeper made a bit more of an effort but still didn't get to it, would have been even better, but it was pretty nice.
No, it was a delicious free kick, I have to say. And I think you said it before that Reus always does well in special jerseys, and so I was looking for that. And he does. I thought he had a pretty good game overall, and I'm very happy with that, especially next to Julian Brandt. Although I must say, you could see that in the build-up play and in position phase, Julian Brandt is a little bit less involved when Marco Reus is on the pitch, because they sort of share responsibilities as oftentimes double eights or double tens or whatever you want to call this position. But still good to see that they can combine fairly quickly if need be. And in the end, I think Jamie Bynoe-Gittens with just another world-class moment to set up Julian Brandt for the fourth goal. Also just another delicious piece of art. I don't even know what to say. I know how the reaction would be on the internet if Jamal Musiala does this kind of stuff. Jamie Bynoe-Gittens maybe does not have the same, pedigree yet, but I'm sure soon enough there will be an even bigger outcry, if you will, or praise for him if he continues to do things like that, because that is obviously crazy. Now I think he will have to do a bit more from the beginning with Adeyemi being out, and I'm not entirely sure how he will fare as a complete starter. I mean, this time he came off after 30 minutes, but I do think that Dortmund will miss Adeyemi's defensive intensity going forward, because that's something that Jamie Bynoe-Gittens doesn't have quite yet, and there is still a gulf there. But my boy, when he just walks past, I don't know, I think in the end it was 4 Hertha defenders who all tried to pull him down. It is just incredible how deep our bench is. And I mean, if you saw the bench before the game, you had Meyer obviously as a replacement goalkeeper, but then you have Reina, you have Dahoud, you have Aller, you have Guerrero, Bellingham, Meunier, Süle, and then Bynoe-Gittens. That's a formidable bench, and that's the depth of a team with a championship winning pedigree, I would say. Whether this game would aspire to the same predicate, I'm not entirely sure, but what I want to say personally is that I'm very happy with the scoreline, because in the past we have very often seen Dortmund trip over themselves in these kind of games. So all things considered, I think a very positive afternoon. I mean, everyone in black, I was gonna say black and yellow, was all black, black and silver if you want, said also there might have not been the best performance, but at this point I don't really care, especially at the back of a big Champions League game. We can talk about the Hoffenheim game now, Lars, because there will be a whole week of preparation, and Hoffenheim are in all sorts of trouble. Obviously, they have switched coaches. They have now Pellegrino Materazzo, the former Stuttgart coach, on the sidelines. But they have the last 4-5 games even. They have all lost them. If you add their cup loss against Leipzig. They're just not doing well. They're in 15th place right now, and actually threatened to become relegated or get relegated, even though I think from their squad quality they should not be in that conversation. But it's Hoffenheim. and there's just no energy around this club. So yeah, we'll see what we can do. Lars, first question I guess I have to ask, how do you feel about Thomas Delaney joining Hoffenheim over the winter? Because that irked me a little bit.
To be honest, I couldn't care less. I mean, the move to Sevilla didn't pan out. Oddly enough, I think he would be one of those guys having a bit of a renaissance at Dortmund at the moment, because I certainly would have him over Özcan on the balance of the last couple of games. But yeah, I mean, I think opportunities for him will have been relatively sparse after not featuring much for Sevilla. I think Bremen came out and said that they thought about it but couldn't afford to even think about it deeply, and I think ultimately wanted to come back to Germany. Are there better clubs in Germany than Hoffenheim from a number of perspectives, obviously, but I don't begrudge players transfer moves. It's their career, it's reasonably short, and if he can make the kind of money at Hoffenheim that he couldn't at Bremen, then who am I to say that he shouldn't have gone to Hoffenheim?
Right. Anyway, so they did lose 1-0 to Augsburg. Pivotal game for Hoffenheim, and probably one they didn't want to lose, but you know,
as opposed to most games that you do want to lose.
Yeah. But what can you say about this Hoffenheim team and why they are so crap at this moment?
Well, honestly, I gave myself roughly 15 minutes of Augsburg against Hoffenheim last weekend or Friday evening, and then I thought, life's too short for this bullshit. Turned off and did something else. So it's not like I have deep, intimate knowledge of Hoffenheim, especially under Materazzo, who I think is a good coach and could easily be coaching at a much higher level in the Bundesliga. And as you alluded to earlier, I think if you look at Hoffenheim's squad on paper, it's not like you identify them at the start of the season as relegation candidates. So I think because I haven't seen Hoffenheim outside of a few bits and bobs here since the first leg or the return fixture, it's not like I have great explanations or whatever. But I think at the start of the season, if you had told me the same exact squad that they have right now is fighting with, let's say, Wolfsburg and Frankfurt or whomever for 6th, 7th place, I don't think I would necessarily have bet an eye. So it's quite obvious that it's not necessarily about individual quality of players, but you know, the team as a whole not working under Andre Breitenreiter, who was their coach until end of January, I suppose. And also, as you alluded to, just the entire vibe about around Hoffenheim is basically a club without direction. They were the upstarts, the nouveau riche, when they came into the league, and then they flirted with having success, made the Champions League a couple of times, especially successful under Julian Nagelsmann. But now that there's a bigger nouveau riche club in Leipzig who are having tangible success, sadly enough, it's sort of like Hoffenheim have lost their way, and also kind of their raison d'être, if we want to keep talking French on this podcast.
Please don't.
Because basically they were this upstart club, doing things differently. They were the Rangnick project, getting young, exciting players from all over the world. Nobody knows them, and suddenly they perform well at Hoffenheim, and as a club, they bring a fresh perspective to the Bundesliga for non-German, non-traditional Bundesliga fans. But now you have that kind of model in a few other places, and obviously the most logical facsimile being Leipzig. So there's kind of the question of what the hell are Hoffenheim supposed to be doing in the Bundesliga? Why are they taking up a place that could go to Hamburg or Kaiserslautern or St. Pauli, or I don't even care. It's like that. If you ask 100 Bundesliga fans, I think 98 of them will say they don't have no idea what Hoffenheim are kind of doing in the Bundesliga at this point.
Yeah, I'm certainly one of them because I honestly have no idea. And if they get relegated, we'd all be better for it. And if Dortmund can, for once, do their part to do it by beating them twice, it'd be even nicer. You know, because that I don't even want to talk about it. That thing that happened some time ago in 2013 is still very painful. Even though it was a very memeable afternoon, but yeah. Anywho, this Hoffenheim team, I'll be honest, the only player that really scares me is Ilas Bebu because of I don't know if he has a great track record per se against Dortmund, but every time I see him, I think he is probably the most dangerous player on that Hoffenheim team. I think he is, classic. I don't want to say pace merchant, but he has a good combination of pace and individual skill. And Dortmund have eaten a few counterattacks where he looked quite dangerous. And so I guess this is something to take an eye on. And obviously, I do wonder if we will get Angelino versus Ryerson or Marius Wolf on Dortmund's right side. Because Angelino did make the transfer to Hoffenheim, and otherwise, yeah. What else is there to say about Hoffenheim? Kevin Vogt is their quarterback, holding center back, if you will, and Oliver Baumann is the most average goalkeeper of the Bundesliga, who is never too high and never too low. Has his blunders here and there, but also some of really solid performances. So, like I said, I find him and most of their team pretty average. And yeah, other than that, there's not too much to say. Obviously, we'll have Thomas Delaney in midfield, probably going up against Özcan and Can and whoever else is there. Probably Bellingham, now that there's a whole week of rest. Yeah, I don't know. My prediction for this game is that Dortmund will take care of business, make it a 3-1 win, and then get the hell out of there.
Seeing as some of these wins have been reasonably, I don't want to necessarily say lucky, but, tighter than the scoreline sometimes should have been arguably, and Hertha being one of them, because after Hertha made it 1-2, there were a few moments where Dortmund could easily have given up their lead, and I'm, even despite their coming back from a lot of bad moments already in 23. I don't necessarily know that they would have won that game, given just how performance went and whatever. So ultimately, I think the winning run is going to come to an end sooner than later, which is just the nature of football. I mean, it's not like Dortmund are suddenly a super team that goes on 16-game winning runs or whatever. I mean, one funny thing is that Dortmund are now exactly where they were last season. After 21 match days, they had 43 points last season. They have 43 points now, and they actually had by only one goal, but still a better goal difference last season and this season. And the only difference in terms of the league table is Bayern having 9 fewer points. But that's just a side note, and a lot of words for me to say that they are going to draw 1-1 at Hoffenheim.
I mean, yeah, it can always happen, especially on the road, and Dortmund playing in Hoffenheim, not always the greatest game to watch either. So I personally am not really predicting a spectacle. I don't think Hoffenheim can afford it anyway to really, open up that much, to be honest. So yeah, if they win, it's going to be a hard-fought one. I do wonder if we'll get to see Gio Reyna make an appearance. Now that Adimi and both Moukoko are injured, I could foresee that. But otherwise, yeah, I just hope Dortmund make it a 9th win and prevent any more injuries, because I feel like they have hit the limit now of bearable injuries. But yeah. Other than that, Lars, I know you want to watch Inter now playing in the Champions League. Until next time, and thank you for listening.